You're listening to the weekly Dartscast. 180!
Hello and welcome to another episode of the weekly Dartscast. Alex Moss here, back as always with my co-host and the man who's celebrating Neil Warnock's 1500th game as a manager. Burton, DeWitt, how you doing?
Well, a little bit better now that there's at least some chance that we might not be relegated at least until March. How are you doing, Alex?
I'm doing well, thank you. And an extra show for this week, I suppose. We weren't quite sure what we were going to do this week, but we thought we'd try and squeeze in another show and look ahead to the World Grand Prix. We've had quite an interesting 2020. First time PDC World Champion in Peter Wright, a first time World Match Play Champion in Dimitri van der Berg. But do we get a clean sweep this year and a first time World Grand Prix champion as well? What do you think?
I think the odds are heavily in favor of there being a first-time Grand Prix champion. If we go back to last show, I said I did not think Michael van Gerwen would get through the first two rounds. I think that quartet that he is in is completely wide open, especially when you look at the first round being just best out of 3 sets, second round being best out of 5 sets. And if he's not sharp right out of the gate, he could be home and hosed in the matter of 20 minutes. And he hasn't been all that sharp more often than not this entire year. And other than Van Gerwen, there's only 2 other previous champions in the field. James Wade, who won it twice now more than a decade ago, and Daryl Gurney, who won it a few years ago. And neither of them are playing up to the standard that they would need to be serious contenders to win this crown. That's not to say they couldn't. James Wade has purple patches out of nowhere and can win even when he's not playing at his best because his timing and his finishing is so good. And this is the type of tournament where that's even more important because it's a double-end format. So James Wade could get hot and win this. Daryl Gurney, of course, has been showing some signs recently that he's getting back towards his best. But you wouldn't put either of them in the first 4 or 5 people that you would say are likely to win this. Obviously, Van Gerwen is one that you would, but it's less than 50% right now. It might have been... you go back a few years, we would have said it's over 50% that he'd win any given tournament because he was winning more than half the tournaments. That's not, especially on TV, that's not the case now. So I'm going to say yes. I think it is. We're going to get a clean sweep. I do not think Van Gerwen's going to win this. I do not think the other 2 previous winners here will win it. Maybe a little later in the show, I'll tell you who I think is going to win. Maybe I won't. But for now, I'm just going to say yes, we will get that clean sweep. And someone, maybe Peter Wright or Dimitri van der Berg will win a second of the big 3 this year, but either way, there'll be a first-time winner of this event. So I'm saying yes.
An interesting side note as well, and we're going to come on to this later on in the show with the new schedule that we've had come out in the last week or so with regards to the PDC and all the big events coming up. But the Premier League finals are going to take place only 3 days after the World Grand Prix final. So if you look in terms of a week payout, there could be potentially the 4th biggest payout in darts history. We've had the World Championship the last couple of years pick up £500,000 for the winner, and the year before that Rob crossed £400,000. But if there's 4 players who've got the chance to do it, if they win the World Grand Prix and then go win the Premier League, this is not counting any bonuses for finishing top or highest checkouts, but they're looking at picking up £350,000 that week. And that, considering the pandemic and everything that's going on, you've got to give the PDC a lot of credit for that a player could walk away with that big sum of money. But that could be something interesting to watch out for if we get to the final when there is a player that is playing in the Premier League and someone who's not playing in the Premier League finals, whether they've got one eye on the Premier League as well. But yeah, I do think we're going to see a different winner this year, and the odds, as you say, I think are probably in the favour of there being one of the 29 players in the field that hasn't won the World Grand Prix before to go and do it. We could have a year, and it's been a very interesting year, we could have a year where Michael van Gerwen goes a whole calendar year without winning the World Championship, the World Match Play, the World Grand Prix. First time he wouldn't have done that since 2013. Spoke on the show last week, you said, I think both of us said, we're not expecting Michael van Gerwen to get to the quarterfinals, which means he probably will get to the quarterfinals and go and win the whole thing. I've got him to go out to Christoph Ratajski in the first round. I know that the record at the minute is 4-0 to Michael van Gerwen, but these records are there to be broken. It's only a year or so ago that Gerwyn Price had never beaten Michael van Gerwen, and he goes and does that. I'm going to go with a new winner. Like you, I don't think it's going to be Michael van Gerwen. I don't think it's going to be the handicapper's nightmare, Daryl Gurney or James Wade. I think we are going to get a new name on the pot this year.
Now, this will be the 23rd staging of the World Grand Prix, the 3rd oldest major on the PDC calendar. And I guess with the 2 older events in the BDO no longer in existence, the 3rd oldest major in darts now that's still active. What are your favorite memories from the first 22 stagings of the event?
I've got to say, the World Grand Prix is probably, out of all the majors that we have in darts at the minute, it's probably one of the most underrated, I'd say. And that you've got the World Championship, of course, that goes without saying. That is the biggest one. There is the World Match Play, which is synonymous with Blackpool and the Winter Gardens, one of the best venues in darts. But the World Grand Prix, okay, it's not going to be at the City West this year. It's going to be behind closed doors in Coventry, the early part of the tournament. Not the biggest of crowds. I know, hearing from what listeners say that live in that area, it's not the easiest place to get to. Obviously, we're not going to have any crowds this week, but there's been a lot of other events that have come in since the World Grand Prix, the UK Open, the Players Championship Finals, Premier League, Grand Slam, European Championship. But there's been some great moments in this tournament, and I've picked out my top 3 moments that I'm going to give you. The third best that I've got is when Michael van Gerwen came onto the scene, won that World Grand Prix, won his first PDC major title against Mervyn King in the final, was 3-0 and 4-1 down. I know there's been a lot of people saying that Devon Peterson potentially could be the player that wins this tournament in the next week or so, and there is some similarities with how these two players went into those tournaments. Michael van Gerwen in the 2012 one, he was top of that list of qualifiers from the Players Championship Order of Merit, and this year's obviously the Pro Tour Order of Merit, but Devon Peterson's top of that list. Devon Peterson has won a title. He's hit a 9-darter as well. I think Van Gerwen had hit a 9-darter in the World Match Played, won 3 titles as well. So there are some similarities between those two players, but that's my third best moment. Second best moment has got to be the 2015 final. Van Gerwen 4, Robert Thornton 5, and not many players can say that they've beaten Phil Taylor and Michael van Gerwen to win major finals, and Robert Thornton's a player that can say that, even though Michael van Gerwen hit 1,880s in that final. And I think I was just happy to hear a bit of Proclaimers 500 miles at the end of a tournament. It doesn't happen very often. And number 1 for me, it's going to be the semi-final 2010, Phil Taylor 4, Adrian Lewis 5. And it's one of them games that if you're a viewer, a listener in the UK, you'll watch on Sky Sports the Darts Gold that they play from time to time. And this is one of the games that they often play. And for me, I know there's a lot of people that say that the games between Phil Taylor and Adrian Lewis, the Grand Slam, the World Match Play, some of the best games that we've ever seen. But for me, when anyone asks me, oh, what's one of your favourite games? Well, this is one of those games, especially between these two players, because it was only 3 months later that Adrian Lewis went on and won the World Championship for the first time. And I know he didn't win this final, the World Grand Prix 2010, but that win against Phil Taylor, I think that kind of gave him the belief that he could go on and win these big titles. And as I say, we saw it 3 months later when he won at Ali Pali for the first time. So that's my few favourite moments.
Not surprised that you didn't mention Robert Thornton's other major title, because he beat Costampe along the way to the World Master title in 2007. Not to bring back bad memories of you, but yeah, I have to start with that Robert Thornton one. That's my favorite memory of this tournament. It's a match that I've gone back and rewatched a couple of times. I won't say I rewatch it every year ahead of the World Grand Prix, but I did rewatch it last year ahead of the World Grand Prix, because it was so amazing to me that was 4 years previous, and Robert Thornton, you know, how much he has dropped since then, how he really didn't kick on from that World Grand Prix, but that week he was phenomenal. And, you know, you look over his last 3 matches, he averaged over 90 in all of them, and he averaged over 90 in 4 of the 5. We don't normally say averaging over 90 is a big deal, but 90 average in the World Grand Prix is basically 100 average in any other tournament. And he did that over the course of the week, 1 match aside. He beat one of the players of the week in Mensur Suljovic in the semifinal from 2 sets to 1 down. He beat the best player in the world in Michael van Gerwen in the final. He was just phenomenal that entire week. And in a match where, yes, Van Gerwen gave him chances, but Robert Thornton took every single chance and kept himself in every single leg so that Van Gerwen was always under pressure, and he made Van Gerwen make mistakes at a time when Van Gerwen did not normally make mistakes. He was really the only player who was able to do that entire year, and he did it in a final. And it was just absolutely incredible. One of the best matches I've ever seen, and one of the most underrated matches I've ever seen. You also mentioned that 2012 Van Gerwen's breakthrough, but I agree with you that, you know, it was something that you could say was coming kind of like Devon Peterson, as you also say. People are drawing those similarities. But Van Gerwen's real breakthrough was the World Match Play, when he threw that 9-darter, when he made the quarterfinals, when he was averaging over 100 on TV and looking like one of the best players in the world. But to be able to come back against Mervyn King like that and just bully him for the last 4 or 5 sets, announced his presence as the next world number 1 in that match. And then beyond that, I guess I'll say, you know, those times that Phil Taylor went out first round, whether it was to Steve West, Vincent van der Voort, Adrian Gray, Kevin Painter, Andy Calaby, those upsets, because of the short format of the first round, it gives everyone a chance, and you get to see names that you would not expect to be able to beat the world number one, even on the pro tour, to do it on TV. It's a format that's not forgiving. And I just love those first rounds because they're so short, 8 matches back to back to back to back, etc. There's just so many good memories of huge upsets. And that's not to also forget that Michael van Gerwen has suffered his share of upsets, losing out to John Henderson. Was that now 3 years ago in the first round, as Henderson ends up making it all the way to the semifinals. That's another one that I'll say is a good memory, probably the biggest win of John Henderson's career.
Now we'll move on to our first guest on this week's show, and this is with the former major winner, Mensur Suljovic. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the former major winner, Mensur Suljovic. How you doing, Mensur?
Everything okay, my friend. Everything okay.
Excellent. Well, really appreciate you taking out some time to have a chat with us, and you're on the way to Coventry today ahead of the start of the World Grand Prix tomorrow. How are you feeling on the eve of another appearance in one of darts' biggest tournaments?
It's good feeling. I practice every day. I hope I play good. It's like it's not in Dublin. Dublin is very nice tournament about Coventry. This new tournament. I hope I play good. I give my best. Feeling good.
And looking at the World Grand Prix, you've had 5 appearances so far. You've made the semi-finals 3 times. Is it one of your favourite tournaments to play in? Do you enjoy the double start format?
I like this tournament, double. I like it. I'm on second now, semi-final. I like this tournament. I hope I play good in this tournament.
Now, I want to rewind back to the end of last year and the World Championship. A big part of history playing Fallon Sherrock in that tournament. Not the result that you wanted, but what was that whole experience like at Ali Pali last year?
I hope Sherlock not play double out tournament. This is hard for me. Well, champion lose last 3 or 4 rounds. I hope in Coventry.
And that early exit at Ali Pali probably ended any chance of you keeping your place in the Premier League for this year. I know that the Premier League this year was very different. A lot of the games were behind closed doors. Did you miss not being in the Premier League though?
This year, no. Really, no. I hope next year. But this year it's good. Still this year.
In March, everything, of course, was shut down with the virus. What were those 4 months like for you, not having the tour running and events to go to?
It's very good. Family every day. I think it's perfect. I hope next year, only 1 month, no 3, 4.
We saw that the PDC start to get things up and running again in July with the summer series and then the World Match Play after the break. Were you keen to get going again, or was you still a little bit cautious with the virus being around?
Yeah, I hope this year is no quarantine, no every week play. I hope.
So in recent weeks we've started to have the crowds come back. The World Series finals, that was in your home country in Austria, then the Euro Tour in Germany. As a player, what was it like having the fans back again?
It's good, but it's different. This is very different. I like no crowds. It's in my country. It's brilliant. Good feeling. My friends is here. I hope every tournament come my friends to help me.
And in terms of the rankings, you've slipped a few places this year down to 15th, and you had a strong second half of 2018, so a bit to defend over the next few weeks. Does that bring any added pressure to you when you play?
I hope really I play good. This ranking number 15, it's okay. Top 16 is everything okay. I give my best. This young player coming, it's hard. I'm okay. I'm feeling good. I hope I play good. Everything good.
Just a couple to finish looking ahead. We've all come to know that you love the double 14 over the last few years. Is that still the case? Are you going to be starting on that this week with the double start?
No, I started with double 16 when last 2 months every time. Double 40 miss. I start with double 16. No in, okay, back to double 40.
And the World Grand Prix, obviously, a start of a busy couple of months for you. Lots of events coming up, and I've got to touch on the World Cup as well, which has moved to Austria, and it looks like you and Roby John Rodriguez are going to be back together for the first time in a couple of years. Are you looking forward to partnering up with him again?
Yeah, Roby's my friend. We practice together. I hope it's good form for Robbie. I hope me good form. Proud on Austria.
And one more before we let you go, we should get your thoughts on a topic which darts fans are talking a lot about at the moment, about the World Championship. What's going to happen to it this year? Would you like to see it moved over to Germany or Austria with fans, or would you like it to stay where it is at Ali Pali?
Me better in Germany and Austria. Ali Pali, I don't know. This is very different. I'm not good feeling in Ali Pali. In Germany and Austria is good feeling, good playing. I hope this year is different.
Excellent. Well, Mensur, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it, and all the best at the World Grand Prix this week.
Thank you. Sorry for me English. Sorry, buddy.
Thank you to Mensur for joining us. Now let's get a message from our sponsors, Low 6, who present this show, of course, and they've got a big prize pot for you guys on Tuesday this week, the first night of the World Grand Prix, the first 8 games in the first round. We've got £100 prize pool for you guys to try and win, and there's a free contest as well to get involved in. 8 games, as I say, on that Tuesday night, and we're going to go through our picks now as well, who we think is going to win each game, so you can play along against us, see if you can do better than us. And first game to kick off the tournament, it is Adrian Lewis against Chris Dobey. How do you see the first game going?
Adrian Lewis has really been struggling recently. Chris Dobey was struggling for a long time after his breakthrough 2019 season, but he started to pull it together in the summer and autumn series. Adrian Lewis does not seem like himself, struggling to win a match in the Players' Championship events over the summer and autumn series. I'm going to go Dobey to win it 2-0.
Like you, I've got to go into Chris Dobey, and in terms of the players and where they're ranked, you've got Adrian Lewis in 16th spot, Chris Dobey in 18th spot, and I think if he wins this game against Adrian Lewis and maybe gets through his next round game, that could potentially put him into that top 16 and drop Adrian Lewis out of that top 16, which I think would be the first time for a very, very long time. We're talking over 10 years here, so it's a big game for both players. And like you, though, I've got it going with the man who's in a little bit better form at the moment. I've got it going Chris Dobey as well.
Second match of the night, Danny Noppert going against Ryan Searle, who'll be making his debut. How do you see this one?
I think a lot of these games are hard games to call on this first night, and I'm just disappointed really that I'm not going to be able to watch it live. I'm going to hopefully try and catch up on the Wednesday morning afternoon to watch these games. But yeah, Ryan Searle making his debut. I think he said as well that he enjoys the double start format, which he's played in local leagues before. But I think it's going to go 3 sets, but I'm just going to give the edge to Danny Noppert on this one. I think he is due a big run in one of these big events. I think Ryan Searle is as well, but I think in terms of these two progressions as players, I think it might just go to Danny Noppert 2-1 on this occasion. I'm
in agreement there. I mean, both of them have been doing well, both of them quietly doing well. You know, we've talked about it before. I think I mentioned we were at someone at probably back in June. One of the questions that the viewers asked was who I said would be the most underrated player in World Darts, and I threw out Danny Noppert. And it's one that you can easily overlook, but he's top 16 statistically this year in the Players' Championship, and he's been a top 16 player in the Pro Tour events, including Euro Tour, since moving over, and has slowly been climbing the rankings, hasn't been getting the attention. But Ryan Searle also has quietly just been going from strength to strength over the last 2 years or so, since his breakthrough run to a final 2 years ago this time, where he lost to Nathan Aspinall, so breakthrough for Aspinall. But I think Noppert's just a little bit better right now and a little bit more experienced in moments like this. I mean, he is a world finalist. He has much more TV experience, and I think that'll get him over the line. But I'll agree with you, 2-1.
Third game then, and it is Mensur Suljovic going up against another debutant in the field, Dirk van Duijvenbode. How do you see this one going?
If we went back, and this was back in March, I would say Dirk van Duijvenbode had every chance to win this tournament. It's not to say he hasn't been playing well recently, but he hasn't been playing nearly at that level that he was at the beginning of the year. He has definitely dropped off from those high 90s, low hundreds that he was averaging while making deep runs before the break, to now more in the low to mid 90s with occasional good match. Mensur Suljovic, on the other hand, has been improving. He hasn't yet won a title this year, but he did make a final in the Players' Championship event. He has been consistent, even when he's going out, playing consistently well and looking like the player that was a top 10 player until just this past year. And I think that'll make the difference. His experience and the fact that he's just playing a little bit better right now. I'll go 2-0 to the former Champions League winner.
Yeah, I'm sticking with you for now as well. I think this is going to go to Mensur Suljovic as well. And I was looking at the head-to-heads earlier as well, and it's pretty one-sided between these two players. 8 wins to Mensur Suljovic, 0 to Dirk van Duijvenbode, and it's great to see Dirk get this chance to play in the World Grand Prix for the first time. I think, in terms of the form, I know Mensur Suljovic has slipped down the rankings a little bit in the last year or so. He's around 14th, 15th at the moment, and we've known him in recent years to be in that top 8, top 10 in the world, but I still think he's playing some good darts, and I think maybe he's been a little bit unlucky at times this year. If he carries on playing the way he's playing, I do think he is due a decent run, and I see him getting through this first round as well. So, I'm going Mensur as well.
Now, fourth match of the opening night, and it's a pair of debutants. Jose de Sousa going against the newest winner in the PDC, Devin Peterson. How do you see this one?
Yeah, this is a really hard one to call. As you say, 2 debutants. We're guaranteed to have a debutant in the last 16, of course, but I'm going to give the edge to the player that has just won their first title. I think that is the way it's going to go, and there will be a lot of hype around Devin Peterson going into this week in Coventry. There's been people that have tipped him to win the title, get through the field, even though he's not played in this event before, to get through the field and win the whole thing. I think maybe it's a little bit of a stretch, but I do think he gets through this first round game. Potentially going 2-1. I think this could go 3 sets. Again, I could see Devin maybe reeling off 2 sets in a row to get this one if he carries on the form that we saw him play in Germany a week or so ago now. But I think it is going to go to the newest winner on the PDC Tour. I'm going Devin Peterson.
Well, I think this will be the first one that we're going to split on, and it's the toughest one to pick. These are 2 of the form players. Okay, de Sousa hasn't won a title yet this year. He has made a final, but he did win title last year, and he's been playing just really, really good, not getting the attention that he deserves because he hasn't been able to win a title yet, but just going deep in every tournament and playing basically as consistently as Peterson. Peterson's 4th in Players' Championship averages this year. De Sousa's 6th, and just a fraction of a point behind him. Peterson will be having all the attention on him, all the pressure on him. I think he can handle it, but there's not going to be any pressure on de Sousa. Maybe just that little bit of extra freedom will make a difference here and there and see him get over the line. I'm going to go 3 sets as well, but I'm going to go for the upset here, if you can call it an upset when you're talking 2 phenomenal players who are on form. But I'm going for the Portuguese player to win it 2-1.
5th game of the night then, and it is Mervyn King against James Wade. How do you see this game going?
Yeah, Mervyn King just missed the World Match Play for the first time in his PDC career. Did not want to follow that up by missing the World Grand Prix for the first time, so he didn't. He got it done in the Summer Series and the Autumn Series. Sorry, he got it done in the Autumn Series to get into here, but also Summer Series to put him in position. Go back before that, playing well before the break to get through the qualifier, because he had a lot to do at the start of the year to get to either of the big major events. And if he had the full year, if we didn't have that break, he probably would have got to the World Match Play the way he was playing after really struggling last year. James Wade, though, he hasn't had that much pressure, but he will have some pressure soon because he'll be defending money from winning the European Championship a couple years ago. That's coming up. No better way to get that started by having a deep run here. That said, I think Wade's just that little bit better, especially in a format like this. Mervyn King will have confidence after his run to the semifinals in the European Tour last week, but you can't trade confidence for just overall class. And right now, James Wade has that little bit more of it. I'll go 2-1, but I think the machine moves through to the second round.
Yeah, like you, I've got it going to James Wade to pick this one up. And this will be the 50th meeting in competitive play between these 2 players. And I don't think there's been too many contests between players where we've seen players play 50 games against each other, particularly in the PDC. But these 2 players seem to have played a lot against each other since their first meeting in the World Match Play 2007 in the quarterfinals, and pretty close in the head-to-head as well. It's 24 wins to James Wade. That win that Mervyn King had in the European Tour a week or so ago now, that was his 24th win, and they've had a draw in the Premier League as well. So it's very tight. I'm going to give the edge to James Wade like you on this one. I think it is. I think for Mervyn King, just getting into these tournaments again after missing the World Match Play, that was the most important thing for him, is to not miss out on these big events. So like you, I do think this could go very close, but it's going to be a tight one. But I'm going to give the edge to James Wade as well.
Now, I've lost count. 6th match of the night. Battle of former world champions. Rob Cross playing the only ranking major that he's never made the quarterfinals of in the PDC, going against Gary Anderson, who, of course, was a finalist here a few years ago. How do you see this one?
Yeah, and I think that's a telling stat as well. Rob Cross, I think he said in interviews in the past that the World Grand Prix is just a tournament that he doesn't quite agree with. And I know he's only played it 2-3 times so far in his career, but it's not one of those tournaments that he's had much success in so far. And I think this is going to go to Gary Anderson's way. And looking at the head-to-head as well, it's 9 wins to Gary Anderson, 1 win to Rob Cross. And for Rob Cross, he's had a difficult time of things. I know he's got to that final of the World Series a few weeks ago now. He's not quite getting to that finishing line, winning these titles recently. And Gary Anderson's had that big break. We said in the last show, is he going to come into this in any good form or not? I think in terms of a short format, if he does turn up and play his game, he could potentially clean this 1-2-0, and I think that's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with Gary Anderson to take this 1-2-0.
Hard to disagree. I'll go a different scoreline than you, but in fairness to Rob Cross, he got a very difficult draw last year and played well. He beat Mensur Suljovic. What I said on our show last week is the tournament that's most made for Mensur Suljovic. And it was the second time that Suljovic went out in the first round. But obviously, this type of struggle against Rob Cross. And Cross played well in that match. And he followed it playing well against Glenn Durrant. Glenn Durrant was having a phenomenal breakthrough year and had debut year, I meant to say, in the PDC, and had a great week making it to the semifinal. Glenn is what he might need to be called in the PDC right now, but Rob Cross didn't do much wrong in those two matches as opposed to the previous 2 years losing to Steve Beaton, where he did not show up. So maybe Rob Cross is learning this format, getting used to it, but this is just such a tough match. And Rob Cross is not his best right now. Neither is Gary Anderson, but Gary Anderson's definitely playing a little bit better than Rob Cross right now. And now, in fairness, both of them not playing at their best is still a very high standard. But I'm going to go Gary Anderson. I think Gary Anderson's just playing better right now in a format that he's more used to. But I'll go 2-1.
2 more games to go then on this first night, and the next game is Krzysztof Ratajski against the defending champion, the number 1 seed, the world number 1, Michael van Gerwen. How do you see this game going?
Now, you tipped your hand on this one early in the show. I think I made my prediction on this one, mentioned what I was picking last week, but I'm not positive. But I'm going to go differently than you. Although I agree that Van Gerwen won't make the quarterfinals, he is going to get through the first round. Records might be made to be broken, and that record will be broken. Ratajski will beat Van Gerwen at some point, but it won't be in Coventry this week. I think Van Gerwen will just get it done. Ratajski's big TV breakthrough in the PDC is coming. His big win over Van Gerwen is coming, but as I said, not in Coventry. I'm going to go 2-0 to the world number 1.
Yeah, I did tip my hand last week. I did say that Krzysztof Ratajski could be one to watch, and if they're going to be one to watch, they've got to get past that first round. And I've tipped Krzysztof Ratajski to get through that first round against Michael van Gerwen. 4-0 in the head-to-head so far, but all the games have been pretty close as well. I think a few of them have been decided, so a few of them have been won by maybe 2 legs. So these games have been tight, and especially in this format as well, best of 3 sets, the double start. I think if Krzysztof can get off on that double start early, get into Michael early, it could be his night. It could be his first win against Michael. So yeah, I'm sticking with my pick from last week. I'm going with Krzysztof to pull off that big upset and knock out the top seed in the first round.
And then the last match of the first night, Michael Smith, the former world finalist, going against Dimitri Van den Bergh back here after making his debut 12 months ago. How do you see this one?
Again, it's another hard one, and we spoke on the show last week that we've got 4 games in the first round between players in the top 16. This is one of them as well, and a battle of the former world youth champions as well. And we've seen that Dimitri Van den Bergh, after he's won the 2 world youth titles, he's been able to follow that up by winning a major title for the first time. Michael Smith still looking for that first major title, and we keep saying on this show, and loads of people keep saying that it's only a matter of time before he does get over the line. And I suppose if we were to pick a tournament where this would be the one that Michael Smith wins, the World Grand Prix would probably be a little bit lower down on those tournaments, but I do think he's going to get through this first round. Mentioned about Dimitri's injury a few weeks ago in the World Series finals. Not quite sure where that is at the moment, but just going to go with Michael Smith. Just going to go with the seed on this one. So yeah, I'm going Michael Smith, and I wouldn't be surprised again if we go 3 sets on this one as well.
Yeah, it's a real tough one to pick, and Michael Smith didn't have the best autumn series, but didn't play poorly. Lost 2 matches where he averaged over 10 points more than his opponent, averaging over 100 in each in the first round against Lisa Ashton and Max Hopp. So he's not been getting all that much luck. He's been running into players who've just had good timing, but that's what Dimitri Van den Bergh has as well. You know, Van den Bergh's timing in the World Match Play was as good as it's ever been, and that's why he lifted the title. He was consistent over the week, hit all the right shots at the right time, pretty much throughout the week, and he lifted the title as a result. And that's what people have been doing against Michael Smith. That said, Michael Smith, I think, has grown, especially on television. And that semifinal against Gary Anderson, even though he lost, was the most impressed I've been with him in a long time, because we saw him fight We saw him grind it out. We saw him lift his game and keep pushing. And it was just that Gary Anderson had an extra gear at the very end. It wasn't that Michael Smith bottled it. It wasn't that Michael Smith fell apart. It's that Gary Anderson threw in a couple of fantastic legs, 11 darters when he needed to. I think Michael Smith is going to come back better from that. And I think maybe, just maybe, this is Michael Smith's week. So I'm going to go him to win. You said in 3 sets. I'll say 2-0. I think he's just going to get it done and just play the best we've seen from him, maybe even averaging over 100 if he can get those doubles to start the legs. So I'm going Michael Smith.
Well, those are our picks, and don't forget that you can go up against us if you think you can do better than us. Download the Low6 app to play. 18 plus, UK residents only, T&Cs apply. Please gamble responsibly, begambleaware.org, and as I mentioned earlier, there's a £100 prize pool for these games on the Tuesday night, so get involved. It's a free contest as well, free to play. Download the app, get your picks in for Tuesday night, and who knows, if you do better than us, I'm sure you could potentially be walking away with a little bit of money as well. But we'll get into some news in a moment. But let's hear from our next guest on the show, and it is with another former major winner, Mervyn King. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the former major champion, Mervyn King. Thank you very much for the time, Mervyn. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad, thanks, Alex. Yourself?
Yeah, doing well, thank you. And you're in Coventry ahead of the start of the World Grand Prix tomorrow night. I believe you've had your COVID test as well. Now, what's this time like? I know you've had the experience with the summer series and the autumn series, turning up to the venue and now waiting for the results.
It could be better, put it that way. Sort of not locked in your room, but you're asked to stay there until you get the results. And it's a bit like house arrest, I suppose. not used to it, but it has to be done. It's one of these unprecedented times at the moment, and it's things we have to do.
Definitely, and you've been on the tour, BDO, then PDC for the best part of 30 years now. So how did you find that initial time at home when the tour got shut down due to the virus back in March?
I mean, I'm a very homely person anyway, so actually being at home wasn't too bad. But after 2 months of sort of not playing, I had to do something. So we redone all the kitchen and, various things around the house and decoration and whatever, and then sat there twiddling my thumbs. I thought, I've got to do something. So I went back to work.
And how did you find it then, going back to work? Obviously, you've been playing darts as a professional for a long time now. What was it like going back to doing a different job, if you like?
It was okay. I mean, I've kept my eye in as far as like building or construction is concerned with doing things around my house, but actually going out and doing a day's graft has been a long while. It was fine. It was okay. I mean, I enjoy it. I still enjoy it now. I'm still doing it, even though I've gone back to playing darts, because we're not getting as much darts as we had before. It's very sort of hit and miss at the moment. It's great that the PDC are managing to get anything on at all, to be frank with you. So you ask the players, we're all grateful for that. But it's okay. I mean, it's an honest job, honest living. It's fun to do. You meet people and that, and it came a bit hard to begin with. I mean, to be fair, with like manual work, loading and unloading the vans, and it's something I hadn't done in a lot of years, so it came a bit hard to start with. But after a couple of weeks, soon sort of got into the swing of things, and still enjoying it.
Excellent. Well, the tour got going again in July, and unfortunately for you missed out on qualifying for the World Match Play. How much of a disappointment was that not to be in the field for the second biggest ranking event of the year?
Well, to be fair, I mean, the pandemic cost me that. The 2 Euro events that I'd qualified for, the 3 Euro events I'd qualified for out of the first 4, I played 1 and done okay. I had 2 more to go. And because of the pandemic, they were put back. And then they were going to be played after the match play. So that only left a few Players' Championships. And because of the pandemic, it was only 5. And I got some really horrendous draws. I played okay. I played well enough, but not quite well enough to beat the top boys. And that cost me the match play, which is bit of a kick, really. It's a major tournament and something I expect to be in every year. But I suppose getting older and these unprecedented times and things being different, it's something you have to take on the chin and sort of move forward, and that's what I've done and qualify for the Grand Prix.
Yeah, and thankfully we did see the European Tour get back up and running a couple of weekends ago, and a brilliant run for you. You had getting to the semi-finals, but going into that weekend, obviously you weren't in the field for the World Grand Prix. Was there any pressure you felt going up on the stage? Because watching on, it didn't look like you had any getting to the semi-finals. A great run.
To be fair, I mean, you've got to look at it along the lines of, I'm here to try and win the European event. I'm not here to try and qualify for a different tournament. I'm there to try and take the trophy and the check home. So you tunnel vision on trying to win that particular tournament, and if that actually qualifies you for something else, then that's an added bonus, and that's the way I've looked at it. I had a good few Players' Championships in the autumn series, and that put me in contention, but I was sort of head down and tail up, if you like, and trying to win the Euro event, and sort of as a bonus of reaching to the semi-final of the European event, it qualified me for the Grand Prix.
And on the way to the semi-finals, of course, you beat Michael van Gerwen 6-1. Even now, do you still get a lift of confidence when you can produce a result and performance like that against the players that are at the top of the rankings?
I mean, to be fair, the game has always been there for me. Sometimes it comes out, sometimes it doesn't. It's true that in the semi-final, I sort of run out of steam in the semi-final, but the Sundays of a European event are hard going anyway. It's not like a Players' Championship where you don't have to get up for the game quite as much, because it's not on stage, it's not on TV, and it's not in front of an audience, albeit a smaller audience. But there was it's like a mini major, if you like, and you have to get yourself up for the game. It's certainly different with the lack of audience, and this one is going to be very unusual for me because there's no audience whatsoever. So yeah, we'll see how this goes.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that. It's going to be a 14th consecutive World Grand Prix for yourself this week, and as I say, after missing the World Match Play, how much are you looking forward to playing in a big TV event again?
Very much so. I mean, any competition, I look forward to playing in any competition, be it on the floor, a European event on the stage, or a major. I just love playing the darts, and might enjoy playing the darts even more with the maybe a very exciting new set coming out shortly for me.
Exciting times. Where you touched on the lack of crowd that we're going to have. Obviously, this event is going to be played behind closed doors in Coventry this week, and we know that you've worn the earplugs on stage for a little while now. But does this change anything for you? How are you going to treat this event with there not being a crowd?
Won't change a thing. I mean, the earplugs will still go in, even more so, because of if you've got a large crowd in there, you've got a general hum and noise, and you don't pick out the somebody maybe coughing, sneezing, or something like that. With no audience, something like that will stand out a lot more. It'll make you jump instead of being mixed up with the general hum of the crowd. So even more so, the earplugs are going to be used.
I don't know if you're aware, but it's going to be the 50th competitive meeting between you and James Wade tomorrow night. It's currently 24 wins each and a draw as well. Any games stand out for you in particular when you've played against James?
Most of them have been fairly good, to be fair. We don't have really bad games. There might be a couple there where the other person hasn't really got going. I'm sure James will say pretty much the same, but yeah, we've had some good games in the past. Win or lose, it'll be conducted in the normal manner when we play each other, and hopefully I'll be the victor.
Moving away from the PDC for a moment, obviously there's been a big development this year with regards to the BDO, which is where you started, had some great success there, great times. A lot of players started there, and it seems to be like it's no more. What was your reaction really when you've seen the news that the BDO is going to fold and it's no more?
Lays a bit heavy with my heart. It's I've had some good years there, made a lot of great friends. Yeah, it's not good for any business to fold, but it's It's not good when it's somewhere where you've got fond memories of being. So it's not good.
Two more really to finish up on, looking ahead for yourself, and we don't have a confirmed venue yet, but you're on course for your 25th consecutive World Championship appearance at the end of this year. What do you put your longevity in the sport down to?
Belief and practice. I obviously don't practice quite as much as I used to. In the BDO, I used to practice every single day because we didn't have the amount of tournaments that we have now. I'm in the PDC. It's a bit different this year, obviously, with the pandemic, but before that, my practice went from probably 4 hours every day, maybe 5 hours a day, to 3 times a week. But those 3 times a week would be probably 5 or 6 hours. But you've got to look at the amount of tournaments that the PDC put on. So we were playing near enough every weekend, where the BDO was every month. So I didn't have the time to practice as much daily as I did in the BDO, but I increased the hours, but more so with the concentration factor. When I practiced, made it more productive than just throwing at the board.
And lastly, a World Masters winner in the BDO. Is it a first major title in the PDC, which is the motivation for you to keep playing, or is there something else?
I just want to play darts. It's sort of in my blood, really, I suppose, since I was 12 years old, since I found the game. And it's now recognised as a sport, and it is something I've loved all my life. The travelling's become hard sometimes with the amount of tournaments we've got on, and it's hard staying away from home. But the actual game itself, I still enjoy, and I enjoy playing well. There's nothing like it. So yes, that'd be great to win my first major in the PDC. It took me a long while in the BDO, but I think the game is still there to do it. The appetite is still there. So fingers crossed. Maybe this week.
Definitely. Well, Mervyn, it's a pleasure to chat to you. Really appreciate you taking out the time to have a chat with us, and wish you all the best this week in Coventry in the World Grand Prix.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks a lot.
Thanks again to Mervyn for joining us. We might come back in the middle of the week and record a show to discuss the first couple rounds of the World Grand Prix. We'll see if we do. But either way, after the World Grand Prix, the events just keep coming with the Grand Slam and Players' Championship finals, European Championships. And there was news involving all three this past week, with the Grand Slam and Players' Championship finals being moved to Coventry, like the World Grand Prix, while the European Championship also had a move within Germany, as well as announcing that the play will be split across 4 days, with all 16 first-round matches in one session on the Thursday afternoon and evening. Any thoughts on either of those announcements?
Lots of news coming from the PDC last week, and long-time listeners of the show will know that this time of year, October, November, December, it is a very busy period of the year for the PDC. Lots of tournaments, and thankfully they've been able to, fingers crossed, put these events on over the next few months, and a lot of them, unfortunately, they are going to be played behind closed doors here in the UK, but we are still going to get the events on. And I was just totting up the tournaments that we've got over the next, starting from Tuesday, the World Grand Prix, the first day, 40 of the next 56 days, we're going to see some darts, some shape or form, whether that's on TV or on a stream or following it online, some sort of floor tournament. We're going to see some darts from the PDC, which is going to be great over the next 8 weeks or so. So really looking forward to that. I suppose looking at it, there's been a few changes in terms of the format. As you mentioned, the European Championship, they've mixed the sessions around a little bit. We're just going to get that bumper session for the first round, the 16 first round games all played in one session, which we're not quite used to. But a few good things that I think come from these changes, that the Grand Slam, that the finals going to be played on one day. We're not going to get the semi-finals in the afternoon, then the final in the evening. Is going to go back to what it was like in the early years of the Grand Slam. I think first 2 or 3 years we had the semi-finals the Saturday night, and then the final the following day on the Sunday night, which I think is, if you get the opportunity to do that in your scheduling and put the final on one night and let the players have that day break, I think that is probably the best way to go. But in terms of these events as well, you've got the Grand Slam, that the Monday and Tuesday afternoon sessions we're going to get for the group stage to kick things off, rather than the Saturday and the Sunday. And as we mentioned earlier, the World Grand Prix finishing off on the Monday night, so we're getting major finals on Monday nights, the Grand Slam final on the Tuesday night. And I suppose really they don't really have to worry about the crowd worrying about, are we going to be able to get a crowd in on a Monday afternoon or on a Tuesday night for a big final, because these events are being played behind closed doors. So it's all down to the broadcasters, Sky, the sponsors. If they can keep them happy, if they can, this is what they want, then I suppose this is what they're going to get, because at the minute this is the main revenue source for the PDC is the television company Sky, ITV, and the sponsors as well. So it's not going to be like we used to with all the finals being played on the Sundays and the Saturdays, and we're going to get the midweek sessions in the afternoons and the evenings for the finals. But it starts, and I think I speak for a lot of our listeners, they'll just be happy that we're getting these events on.
Yeah, I mean, that's the most important thing that you said right there at the end, the fact that they just have to get these events on, and that we should be happy about that. And as well, it comes down to what do the television networks want. If we're not able to get a crowd in, then you have to figure out how do you keep the broadcasters and other sponsors happy. Unfortunately for me, this is less than ideal because of the 6-hour time difference. These finals will be starting at 1 or 2 in the afternoon on a workday. So I might not be able to watch. And, well, let me rephrase that. I might not be able to watch live. But we live in the internet age, and I can always watch it on YouTube right after the fact, a few hours later. It's really not the end of the world, even for people who will be at work. And you look at people down under who are used to having the matches, the finals, be on a Monday morning or overnight on a Monday night. That's obviously not ideal. It's still the same for them if it's going to be if it's on a Tuesday night, that'll mean it'll be on a Wednesday morning for them. But you can't make everyone happy no matter how you do it. I do like having all 16 players play across that one session. I think it'll be fantastic. Just match after match after match on a Thursday afternoon into evening. It will be draining, obviously, for the people working it, but it is exciting. You don't have that few-hour break between sessions to catch your breath. It's just going to be, especially with a best out of 11 format, these are short matches. It's just going to be high intensity for 7-8 hours nonstop, and you really only get that at the UK Open in the first couple sessions. So I think that'll be good. Beyond that, I don't have many thoughts. If it's not safe or not legal, or both, to have these events in front of a crowd, you have to have some alternative. We'll get to whether events that are scheduled in the UK or Ireland should be moved to Germany later. But beyond that, I don't have many thoughts. It's not ideal for me, but you can't make something that'll be ideal for everyone. And the logistics of finding a venue that you can rent out for a week is not easy. And if that means the event will have to be Friday through Wednesday or something along those lines, you have to do what works. And that's going to be the case for really over the next year or so until things are back to normal.
Now we'll move on to our final guest on this week's show, and it is with one of the debutants in the World Grand Prix this week, Gabriel Clemens. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by one of the debutants in the World Grand Prix this week, Gabriel Clemens. Thanks for the time, Gabriel. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm okay.
Now, it was recently the 3-year anniversary of one of your breakthroughs, the semi-finals of the World Masters 2017. You've continued to make big strides ever since. How do you look back on the last 3 years?
Oh, the last 3 years, my life is complete change. I'm now a full-time dart player. I'm work every day. Now I'm practice every day.
And it was the start of 2018. You went to Q School for the first time. What persuaded you to go and try and win a tour card and get onto the PDC main circuit?
Yeah, it's easy. It's a hard thing. I played at the Q School. I win on the last day my tour card, and I sit down, and I'm now in the top 128 players in the world, and I have no idea why in this moment.
What was it like those first few weeks, first few months playing on the tour and going up against the best players in the world?
Oh, it's crazy. I'm see the players every time in the TV, and now I'm play against these players.
Over the last few years, we've seen you make several finals on the floor. We've seen you make a final in the World Series as well over in Germany. You beat some top players. Was that one of the best weekends of your career so far?
Yeah, of course. But I hope I have better weekends in the coming weeks or months or years.
Looking at the last 12 months, we've seen some impressive performances from you in the major events. The Grand Slam, you had a 110 average in the group stage. You had some very close games with Glenn Durrant, Gerwyn Price at the UK Open. How much are those experiences helping you get used to playing on that stage?
Yeah, it's good to play on the stage and to have experience on the stage. I lost in these games always with little things was not good, and then I lost in these games, and I hope it's better in the next months.
A couple of months ago, you made your debut in the World Match Play. Very different circumstances with it being behind closed doors and with no fans. How did you find that whole experience?
Yeah, it's difficult. Normally we have 3,000 people in the area. Now we have music from the radio, and it's difficult. But it's at the time it's the only thing we can play, and then we must do the best thing.
It's another debut for you in a big event this week, the World Grand Prix. You're last up in the first round against Nathan Aspinall. How are you feeling about that, and also the double start format as well?
I never play double in, double out before this week, and we see it. Nathan is a great player. He's number 6 in the world, and I hope I can make a good game, and then we see.
Excellent, and it could be a run to the quarterfinals. Would likely see you break into the top 32 and also become the new German number 1 in the rankings, overtaking Max Hopp. Is that something you've got your eye on, or are you not focusing on that at the moment?
No, that's not my focus. I look to me and not either number 1 or 2 or 3. I must make my life from this dart, and that's not important for me. I'm the number 1 or I'm the number 2.
Well, it's looked like you're going to make another debut next month in the World Cup alongside Max for Germany. How much are you looking forward to representing Germany in that event?
Yeah, that's a great feeling to play for Germany, and I hope we make a good tournament. We can beat every country, and I think we in good form, and then we see.
And lastly, I'll ask you as well, it's a big talking point with what's going to happen with the World Championship. What would you like to see happen to it?
I hope it's in the Alley Pally. The Alley Pally is the place for the World Championships.
Well, Gabriel, thank you very much for your time. I do appreciate it, and best of luck in your debut in the World Grand Prix this week.
Thank you.
And we'll finish up with some listener questions. The first one comes from John Thompson, who says, has there ever been a better series of games in a given year than Price Peterson this year?
I mean, it's definitely up there, but we haven't yet had them have one of those on television yet. Yet might be the operative word. They could end up playing the World Final, and then, yes, I think it will be there or thereabouts. Obviously, you could say an obvious one like the Adrian Lewis, Phil Taylor back in 2012 when they had the World Match Play Final and the Grand Slam semifinal. But I want to go back even further than that and have two that really jump out at me. First was Van Barneveld's first year in the PDC with his matches against Phil Taylor, which really made us think that Phil Taylor had a real equal, and for a year at least, he did. Because they went neck and neck each time they played. They drew their first match in the Premier League. Taylor just got over the next match. Then in a set of TV events, Van Barneveld beat him in the UK Open and Las Vegas Desert Classic. First in a last leg decider, then a last set decider. Taylor got one back in the World Grand Prix, and then we all know what happened in the World Championship Final. Arguably the greatest match ever played. It's hard to top that across 6 matches, all on TV. 5 of the 6 going down to the last leg are set, and the other one was pretty close as well. Tough to beat that. I'll throw one other one at you, and it goes back even further, and that's John Part against Phil Taylor back in 2002. After Taylor just destroyed Part in the World Championship the previous year, Part nearly beat him in the World Match Play Final. It was up 16 legs to 15 before Taylor turned it on to win 18-16. Then they met in the World Grand Prix Final, which was closer than the scoreline, and then Part getting over the line and winning the title, following that up early the following year by beating him a couple more times, including in the semifinal of the Las Vegas Desert Classic before losing to Peter Manley in the final. For a year and a half or so, they were really even and playing some of the matches that were as good or better than the Taylor Van Barneveld. So I'm going to say those two jump out because of the magnitude of the matches.
Definitely, yeah, some great choices there, and Going Price, Devon Peterson has got to be up there as well. They've only played 3 times this year, and as you mentioned, they probably need to play on TV to get it to a bigger audience of darts fans. But the 3 games that they've had so far on the streams, the summer series when I think, what was it, 113 average that Devon Peterson had and he lost 7-6. Then the autumn series final as well when he missed the match darts against Going Price in the final. And then more recently, of course, that European Tour game when Devon was 5-1 down and came back and won 6-5. So 3 great games there. Like you, I had the Phil Taylor, Raymond van Barneveld, those early years when Barney crossed over to the PDC. That was on my list as well. Taylor Van Gerwen, that the last few years, I suppose the last year really, when we knew that it was going to be Phil Taylor's last year, and looking forward to those games and the hype around those games, I suppose in terms of standard, maybe not as good as the Price Peterson games. And I think Going Price just seems to get the best out of these players as well, because I also had down here Glenn Durrant, his first year when he came over to the PDC. He had a few good games with Going Price against Nathan Aspinall last year as well. They had some really good games as well. Michael Van Gerwen, Gary Anderson, I think it was around 2016, 2017. It was one of the years when they had that unbelievable game at the Dubai World Series event. They seemed to be playing each other quite regularly on those couple of years as well. And there was a genuine debate, and we had it on this show as well, especially 2017 time, that is Gary Anderson now the best player in the world? And they were switching between, Michael's going to win this game, Gary's going to win this game. It was a very close rivalry. And one more I'll pick out as well, Michael Van Gerwen, Raymond van Barneveld, 2014, and it was the year that Barney beat Michael in the Premier League final. He beat Phil Taylor in the semis, then he beat Michael in the final to win the title. I think they played 6 times on the TV. It was 4-2 to Michael, but they had some great games on TV that year as well.
Yes, indeed. Now we'll move on. Another listener question. This one comes from Sebastian Mock. Do you think the PDC will move the World Championships to Germany or somewhere else if there'll be no crowd allowed at the Ali Pali in England?
Yeah, we had a few people ask this. We always put out a tweet saying, get in touch with any questions you have for the show. And there were a few people, Sebastian was one of them, to put this question out. And at the minute, we're not quite sure, are we? Everything else on the PDC calendar for 2020 is sorted. The World Championship is the one that we're not quite sure of. And I think it was a week or so ago now, I had an email from Alexandra Palace, the venue, telling me about live at Ali Pali. They've got some indoor socially distanced events coming up this month in October, November, comedy and music events. Not quite sure what the capacity is for these events, but I believe it is the same hall that they use for the darts. And unfortunately, in terms of sports events, there's been some frustrating news the last couple of weeks from the government that the ideas to get fans back into events, limited capacity, that's been put on hold. So it's difficult now to see when we're going to get fans back in for sports events at least, but I think we're going to see it move. That's just my opinion at the minute, and I think the World Cup's going to be the big one. We've seen the World Series have that 1,500 people, the European Tour a couple of weeks ago, 500. We've got 2 more European Tour events, the European Championship as well. We know it's going to have fans in Germany. I think the World Cup could be the big one, and I know it's still a month away. There might be some plans made before then, but if they're able to get the 32 nations, the 64 players from all around the world, all corners of the globe, get them into Austria for that event and get them back out as well safely off, then we could see the event move. But we've seen a lot of big sporting events this year played without fans behind closed doors, Champions League final, football, cricket, everything. There's been a lot of events that we've seen played without the fans, and we do know that the World Championship will happen. It's just whether it's held at Ali Pali, Coventry, Milton Keynes, or somewhere outside of the UK. And I think if you ask 99% of the players, they would like it to be with a crowd. And if we're going to get a crowd, it is going to have to be outside the UK. And that is the $1 million question at the moment is, are we going to get it with fans? And if we do, it's going to have to be outside of the UK.
Yeah, and I mentioned a few weeks ago, why not consider even Australia for this? And, if you look at the numbers right now, the number of active cases at the time of recording in all of Australia is down to 304. And, there is the market there, as we've seen from them being 2 or 3 World Series events there each year for the better part of a decade now. This year, obviously, is an exception. That's where you could, in fact, get a full crowd in. And they're allowing in venues already down under 50%, in some places 75% capacity. Come Christmas time, they could allow 100%. The counterpoint, though, is it's going to be difficult to get all the players over from Europe during the holidays to go over for an extended period of time, especially if they're going to have to quarantine there for 2 weeks, which they might not have to in Europe. But if you want to have it in front of a full crowd, why not? And this is the best chance it'll ever have to really bring the World Championship somewhere else. You could always bring it to Germany next year or something like that, and I think at some point it will. But to really bring it to some place that's never been in a different part of the globe, why not? But I do think it's definitely a possibility, whether it's Germany, whether it's Austria, whether it's across the globe this year. I think it has to be under consideration, because if you can get a crowd, even if it's 25%, that is a significant amount of money over 17, 18 days in multiple sessions. So I do think it's a realistic possibility. But like we both have been saying for a while, we'll just have to wait and see.
Next question, and it comes from Dartscast. He says, do you think there should be more PDC competitions that vary from the standard 1v1, 501 format like the Grand Prix? Aside from the World Cup doubles, is the format of darts too one-dimensional?
I've said before on the show that I think there should be more. That's one of the reasons, though not the only reason I really like the World Grand Prix. A big reason why I like it, it's not just the variety, but because it's a format I like, the double-in format. I like playing it. I practice it. When I pick up the darts, I don't practice it or play it nearly to the standard of anyone who will be competing in it, but it's fun, and it's fun to watch, especially when a player is missing 9, 12 darts to get in. It's, you feel for them, but it does add to the drama. That said, I would like to see more variety. I'd like to see more pairs events, or more where there's different leg length, or just something different. You can bring in cricket like that we play in the US or something, but I would like to see more variety, because there's so many different games you can play on the dartboard. 501 is the main format. It should remain most of the tournaments, but there should be more variety. It will make events more unique. As things are right now, the biggest variety we see is set play, and even then it's only besides the World Grand Prix at the World Championship. I don't see why there shouldn't be another or a couple other tournaments with something different.
Yeah, I certainly think there's a market there, and shout out as well to Dartscast. Go and check him out on YouTube as well. Great videos that he puts out there. But yeah, like you, I think we could see some more events use different formats, and we've spoke on the show in the past about there being a tournament maybe like the snooker shootout, where it's a very short format, maybe a race to 1 or 2 legs, and you could do a 301 or a 1001. I've said for a little while now that the World Cup, which is of course one of the events which is a different format, you have the doubles in there, but when you get past that first round you do have the singles in there as well. I've said that it should be one game doubles the whole way through. I think that would be a much better format to do it, because when we get to those latter rounds, when you get the 3 mini games, the 5 mini games to the final, you get going and all of a sudden the game's over. I think it'd be much better if you just had the one game for each round of the tournament. I think that would be a better way to do it. But yeah, I think there is an appetite for it, and especially now we're talking this week when we've got the World Grand Prix double start. When I play in my local league, I've not played for a little while now because that league's not going on at the moment, but a lot of the time we are playing that double start, and when this tournament comes around and we're meeting to play during the tournament, a lot of people say, oh, they're playing the proper darts this week, they're playing the double start. So yeah, I'd like to see it as well.
And last question comes from Juanita McDade. I guess I should do some background. We learned last week that the development tour came to an end, and we learned that Keane Barry and Barry Vampire will be PDC tour card holders next year. Obviously, one of them could go on and win the World Championship, and then someone else will get a tour card, but they will, at the very least, both of them will get it, if not through the development tour, through something else. And in the case of Keane Barry, he played the World Championships last year. Barry Vampire, of course, had a tour card for a few years, got into a lot of Players' Championship events last year. How much of an impact do you think they'll have as tour card holders next year?
Last week we spoke to 2 young players that did very well at Barnsley over the weekend, Ryan Meikle and Joe Davis, but we didn't touch on these 2 players, Keane Barry and Barry Vampire. And looking at it, I'd probably say Keane Barry is the one that I'm looking at who's going to make the most impact out of the 2. His pedigree that we've seen in the youth game. He's a BDO World Youth Champion, a BDO World Youth Master. He's won the JDC World Youth as well, and last year we saw him playing the PDC World Championship for the first time, and he is a player with an immense amount of ability, and he was very close to winning that tour card at Q School. And it's quite funny as well, you look at both of these players. Keane Barry got to the final on one of the days of the UK Q School. Barry Vampire over in Germany got to the final on one of the days of the European Q School as well. So they've both got over that setback and managed to get through that development tour, get high enough on the rankings to get their tour card through that route. And we've got to give every credit as well to Barry Vampire. It's well documented the struggles that he's had with dartitis. You go back 2017 Grand Slam, and one of my friends was at the session when he played Cameron Menzies in one of the last group games to get through, and it was an emotional game, I think, for a lot of people that were there that night, and watching on TV to see Barry struggle with the dartitis and come through that game. And I've not had too many dealings with dartitis myself or playing in games. I think there's only one game when I played at Mildenhall Social Club, played in the Eric Bristow Keith Della doubles open, played 2 ladies in one of the rounds, and one of the ladies really did struggle to let go of the darts and was pretty much walking over the oche when they were throwing the darts, and from watching that, I can see how hard it is to cope with the dartitis. So every credit to Barry Van Peers. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of listeners and a lot of darts fans that will be hoping that Barry can do well as well on the tour.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I agree that we expect that Keane Barry will make, if not an immediate impact, an impact at some point. I mean, he's still only 18 years old, and the little we've seen from him on TV has given us every reason to believe that he is a future star of the game. Winning the BDO Youth World Championship earlier this year, having a good showing on debut in Ali Pali last year, and obviously been a very good player on the development tour so far and in other youth events. But don't underestimate Barry Van Peers' ability to come back in his first year in 4 years next year with a tour card and make an immediate impact, because he's been doing really well the last couple of years since getting over his dartitis. We saw him at the back end of 2019 get onto a bunch of Players Championship events, and that's because he was doing really well on the Challenge Tour, just narrowly missing out on getting a tour card through the Challenge Tour after winning an event and having just the best year we've seen from him in quite some time. And he played well in the 10 Players Championship events he got into. He had wins over Daryl Gurney and Dimitri Vandenberg, and you don't beat them by fluke. And one of them, he beat Dimitri Vandenberg in a last leg decider. He was able to hold his nerve and get over the line. So he's shown that he could beat the very best at the very highest standard. I think he'll be able to come back and have a very good first year back. And you mentioned, he lost out on a final in Q School this year, losing out to Karol Sedlacek on the third day, and still nearly got in through the Order of Merit, like Keane Barry nearly did in the UK Q School. He's been very close to getting back his tour card through multiple means the last couple of years. Now he has it. I think he'll make an impact. He's playing well. I think he's the better chance to make the immediate impact, but long term, Keane Barry could be a future world champion. We don't know. He also could decide, like Harry Ward, that this isn't for him. He is 18. We don't know. I think both of them, though, will have an impact. Barry Van Peers will be more immediate. Anything else for this week?
Couple of things. Got to give one more mention as well to our sponsors of the show, Low Six. Get involved in the £100 prize pool that we've got for Tuesday's first round games in the World Grand Prix. So download the app and have a go at that. Have a go against our picks as well. See if you can do better than us. And also give a shout out as well. We've got a sweepstake running courtesy of Loxley Darts. We've got 2 prizes up for grabs. So if you get to the final, if one of your players gets to the final, then you'll definitely win a prize. You're either going to win a Ryan Searle red or black shirt or a Steve Hines shirt. And to enter our contest, enter our sweepstake, all you've got to do is quote our pinned tweet on our Twitter when we put this podcast out, and then use the hashtag Dynamite Darts Content, and that will get you a spot. Once we've filled the 32 spots, everyone will be involved in that, and you've got a chance of winning one of those shirts courtesy of Loxley Darts. So thank you very much to them. And before we should go, we haven't actually said who we think is going to win the World Grand Prix. So who are we tipping to win it?
Oh, putting me on the spot. Ooh. You tell me your pick first, because I wasn't expecting to answer this. I've thought about it, but I haven't yet made a pick. So I'll let you go first.
Okay. For me, I think if I was going to nail my colours to the mast, if you like, for one player, I can't really nail it down to one. I'm going to have to go with 2. I'm going to go with Peter Wright, and if Glenn Durrant gets past Dave Chisholm, if Peter Wright gets past Ryan Joyce, I'm going to go with the winner of that last 16 games. So I'm going to go with Peter Wright or Glenn Durrant to win the title. All
right. Well, so I kind of hinted at earlier that I think that Michael Smith's breakthrough is coming. And okay, he's in the much more difficult half of the draw, just in the fact that it has more top 16 players and more informed players in the bottom half. And whoever gets through that, it's going to take a monumental effort. But I just feel like maybe this is Michael Smith's week. Maybe the fact that he's going to have to hit his doubles to get in will help him just stay concentrated and play at his best, because he can finish when he's on, and he can hit 180s even when he's off. Maybe this double in format will bring out the best in him. I think he's going to go to the final. I think he'll play Gerwyn Price. Who do I have to win that match? I'm going to go Gerwyn Price to win the World Grand Prix. We'll say 5-3, but it's going to be a good match. And this could just be Michael Smith's week, but I'm going to pick Gerwyn Price. Just echo those thoughts. Thanks to our sponsors. Thanks to our Patreons. Thanks to our listeners for sending in questions, for listening each week. Almost up to episode 170. that'll be the last checkout episode we have. That means episode 180 is around the corner. Maybe we'll have to go quadruboard checkouts to figure all those out so that there's meaning to the episodes after that. But let us know anyone you want on, especially as we move towards episode 180. I guess that should be a bumper episode. But for Alex Moss, I am Burton DeWitt. Thank you for listening. As I said earlier, we might be back mid-tournament. We might not. If at the very least, we'll be back after the World Grand Prix. So hang tight. Enjoy the festivities in Coventry. Wherever you are, enjoy. Well, stay safe and stay hanging tight.